Well, I'm Regina Imburgia, and I'm a born activist. I'm always trying to expose the truth. So I started this group in May of 2013, and the name of it is Activists, plural, for Truth and Liberty. And the whole idea was doing things like this, finding out things that aren't being exposed, and then expose them, bring light to them, and then create activism to do something about it. So that's the name of the group, and we have a website by that name. We have a Facebook by that name. And my email is my name, Regina, R-E-G-I-N-A, .imburgia, I-M like Mary, B like baby, U-R-G-I-A, @gmail.com. And my phone number's all over everything. So just let me know if you want some information to move forward. In 1965, the city council decided to put fluoride in the water. Okay, and this was a decision just by the city council, and they purchased the equipment and they made this resolution. And around that same time, there were some activists that did not like this idea, so they got a petition together to have it be illegal to put this fluoride in the water. So it came to a vote of the people, and this was back in 1965. Okay. And 27,080 people came out to vote. Keep that in mind, folks. 50 years ago, this decision was upheld by only, 27,000 people came, and it was a vote of 2-1 to keep the fluoride in the water. So when they say it was a vote of the people, consider two things. It was the council deciding to put it in, and then the people voted. So now it's a vote of the council to take it out, okay? And that's what we're dealing with right now, because right now this council has the opportunity between January 2015 to decide if they're going to buy any more hydrofluorosilicic acid to put in the water. When you go for your 3 minutes to speak, one of the things most people say is they don't even listen. And it's true. The first time I went, people were eating, talking to each other, getting up and down, handing notes, and it really was true, and it was disheartening. But from the beginning, Sheffy Kadane gave eye contact. He sat in his chair and he listened. Now, figure people here, we got 3 minutes, and they usually only have 5 people speak in the morning. Total of about 15 minutes, you know? You would really think that your elected officials could give you that much time. Yes, right? Now, in their defense, I have heard that sometimes they've heard it all, they have the same people coming in, and that's their excuse. Okay, that's what they say. But Sheffy Kadane wasn't in that camp. So after it was like in April, I think it was April, I said to Sheffy one day, because I had extra time, and I said to him, "Thank you, you always give eye contact," and he said, "It's the least I can do," and it's so true. And since then, and that day, I asked him if he would give me more time, and then we talked about it more, and then he's going to come up here and explain, because when he said in the chambers what he said, which was, we need to halt this and we need to halt it now, that message was picked up by the newswire, and it went around the world, literally. I don't even know how many thousands and thousands of people heard it, because there were just, everyone was calling me, and to the point where the city council, some of them were paranoid that people were really going to think that Dallas is stopping fluoridation. So Sheffy set them straight, and the deal of it is it needs to be done. So there's going to be a call to action, guys, and what it is we need to keep talking to these city council people and keep bringing it forward. But right now, we are very blessed to have Sheffy Kadane. You're going to come up and talk for a minute and say what you had to say? Yay, one.
You all are too kind. Let me tell you how this all happened. We're in council and we're in budget. It's budget time. And everybody's looking for money. So we're going through our budget, and we had the Jody Puckett was up explaining the water situation. That's one of my pet peeves, is the water. Because I told her, I said, let me tell you what, if you don't get those reservoirs today, 50 years from now, we're not going to have the water. And that's what happened 50 years ago. they got our reservoirs that we're using today. So I push her on that constantly. So they were looking for funds in the budget to reduce the budget in order to bring on entities that each council district wanted. So I was looking through that budget, the water budget, and I saw the fluoride, and I got to tell you, I didn't know much about fluoride at all, but I saw where we were purchasing 0.0002% fluoride. Now, we weren't taking fluoride out of our water. That's what one of the council members thought, that we were pulling it out of our water. That's not true. We have 0.005% naturally. It's naturally in the water. And we were going to add another 0.002% into the water just to bring it up to the maximum amount. And I kept saying, why do we have to have the maximum on everything we do? And it was going to cost us $1 million for that 0.0002%. And I said, that just, it doesn't sound right to me. And that's when I told the council, I said, wait a minute, I've got you $1 million right here. I said, let's just drop the 0.002% fluoride, and we've got $1 million. I had one councilman immediately said, hey, that's a good idea. I'll go for that. And then I had another council person come up and say, no way. I was raised with fluoride. I don't want to lose the fluoride. And, yeah, and so, you know, and I didn't know enough to speak to her on it, but I learned, thanks to you, I've learned a lot about fluoride. And I realized, if more of us would look at the stats, look at the statistics, and I found all over the world, people drink water, and we're more than halfway down the list, and the people that are on top of the list do not have fluoride, and they are underneath our dental cavities and whatnot. We're rated high, and we've still got fluoride. You know, so I said, we need to get that money. We can get those funds. I kept working, trying to do it. She gave me all the info I needed, and I found out that the fluoride we get is not even a pharmaceutical grade fluoride. It's it's made out of manure, isn't it? I'm not sure. I'm sure the doctor will tell you about that. But anyway, it's not a pharmaceutical grade fluoride. It's only 0.002% that goes in the water per million. And I've just got to say, I'm not a dentist, I'm not a doctor, but I got to say, I'm swallowing that stuff. How is that fluoridating my teeth? I mean, I'm putting it in my stomach. Well, one dentist told me, he says, oh, no, it stays in your system and it comes through the saliva. And I said, no. I said, I've already gotten rid of that water a long time before it ever got to my mouth. So anyway, I just couldn't see the reasoning behind us spending $1 million on that smaller percentage of fluoride. And so I'll stand my ground on it. I want my constituents to be able to back me on it. Oh, I've got a good one right here. Doctor, it's good to see you. I was going to call you and tell you to be sure to come. I got to change this man's mind. I don't know that I ever will. He's a very smart dentist in the city, T. Bob Davis. Good to have you tonight. Yeah. And he's also a concert pianist. I wish we had a piano. I'd have had him playing it before we got started. But thanks for being here, T-Bob. So anyway, I'm going to shut up. I can rattle on and on about this and can tell you nothing. I mean, I'm not that smart to tell you about fluoride and what's in it and what it does and why we don't need it. But I need that $1 million, I'll tell you that.
Thank you, Sheppy. Okay, so do you know what he has? He stands for what's right. It's right, and he's going to do the right thing. So, but we've got to help encourage these guys. They're afraid. A lot of these council people are afraid for a couple reasons. Some of them, it's because they say they're pro-fluoride, and they don't like to change their mind. They don't like to change their position. Actually, my councilman is Philip Kingston. And repeatedly, since November, he will not talk to me about fluoride. To the point today, I said to him, I have a doctor with me, and he's here. He's going to be talking about fluoride. I said, will you talk to him? And he said, no. He won't talk to him. So that's not what we look for in elected officials. And I believe, do we have any candidates in the audience? I believe before the night's out, we will have some candidates, because there are 5 guys running for Sheffy Kadane's position in District 9. And that's just, I mean, it may grow, you know, but right now there's 5. And all 5 of them, I invited them to come, and most of them said they'd be here. I even saw one guy today, and I'm going to announce when he comes in. But it's important that I know this is District 9, and you might want to find out where they stand on a lot of different things. So when they come in, if I see them, I'll let you know. Okay, so we are going to get started with the program. Let me think. You know, it takes me a minute to kind of remember what I'm doing here. I guess we're going right into Dr. Osmundson. But let me introduce you. I got to tell these people about this guy now. Dr. Osmundson is a dentist, and he was a pro-fluoride dentist for 25 years. He's a 30-year practicing dentist. He came all the way from Washington State, and he's very passionate about this. He left his practice to do this. He's been speaking out against fluoride or opposing fluoridation for 5 years now. But he told me that it took a while. There were people like me kind of talking to him, and it took a while for him to want to believe it. But he's got that story to tell. And let's see, one more thing. He also has a master's in public health degree, which is really important. This is part of it. And I heard someone else do an introduction. I thought it was really cute. He's got an MK. And that means he's a missionary kid, So he's got a well-rounded background. I'd like you to welcome him and hold your questions, but write them on the card. He will address the questions at the end, okay? So this is Dr. William Osmundson.
It's a pleasure to be here. My dad lives in Dallas, and so it was fun to come and visit him. And I do want to thank Regina for making this possible, because she's the one that spearheaded it and got me down, and I really appreciate that. So I'm going to go rather fast. I'm not going to do a lot of little extra stories along the way, because we have 3 or 4 speakers, and so I want to go quickly through this, and if there's questions, be sure to ask at the end. I'll stick around at the end and ask me some questions. Now, how much fluoride do we have in our water? How many of you know how much fluoride you have in your water? Some of you do. Well, this is the 2013 water quality reports from the city, and this is what they report. Anywhere from 0.29 in University Park coming on down to 1.5 in Cedar Hill, and that's what they say in the printed literature. Today I talked to the Dallas water manager, Terry Hodgins, and he said, well, actually it's 0.5 naturally, and it varies, and then it goes to 0.7. So I'm going to use the 0.5, 0.7. That's because that's what they say it is. That's not what they publish. Artificial fluoridation, a top 10 public health blunder of the 20th century. Amen. The Dallas Water Quality Report says fluoride, inorganic contaminant average, 0.4 parts per million. Erosion of natural deposits, water additive which promotes strong teeth. There's several things that I want you to read there very carefully, and let's understand. Fluoride, organic, inorganic contaminant. It is a contaminant of water, okay? And the water additive which promotes strong teeth. The purpose is to prevent a disease. Very important. I'm going to tell you the conclusion at the beginning so you can understand where I'm going with all of this. Many are ingesting too much fluoride. That was the first thing that I looked at with a master's in public health. As a dentist, I'm looking at dosage. How much are people getting? We're getting too much. especially infants and children. My request is to turn off the fluoride pumps. That's the easiest public health benefit we can do for people, is just turn it off and save the $1 million. If anyone wants more fluoride, what can they do? Well, they've got lots of options, but they can drink another glass of water. All we're doing is reducing the concentration. We're just reducing the exposure of people just a little bit, and we've been getting more and more. I'll show you that in a little bit. We want freedom of choice. Public health officers may legally use police powers to prevent highly contagious diseases from spreading, such as Ebola. Anybody heard about Ebola? Oh, you have, good. Well, that's what public health officials can do. They can say, don't fly in an airplane. They can say, we're going to put you in a little room here and isolate you until we can get this disease under control. That's the same police powers, reasoning, and logic that they use for fluoridation of public water, except for the fact that dental caries is not a highly contagious disease. Okay? And it's not lethal. Well, actually, treatment is more lethal than the disease. Fluoridation is the treatment of everyone, and let me explain that a little bit. More children die from treatment than they do from lack of treatment, but of course more people get treated. So, I'm stretching it there just a little bit. Fluoridation is the treatment of everyone with the intent, now I'm using the word intent over and over again because that's extremely important here, to prevent a disease without consent, without doctor's prescription, without a dosage control, without FDA, Food and Drug Administration Center for Drug Evaluation and Research approval, without any prospective randomized controlled trials. The science is fair to poor. Now this is where the most important aspect of this whole evening is judgment. And none of us are the Food and Drug Administration Center for Drug Evaluation and Research. They are the trained toxicologists, epidemiologists, pharmacists, all those people who take the research and they say, does this stand up to the evidence of effective, and does it stand up to the evidence of safe? They're the people that the city needs to be taking the information to and saying, is this good or is this not? You're the experts, FDA, tell us. The benefit, the FDA CDR so far has said the evidence is incomplete, so they've denied approval. Risks, FDA and EPA say, yes, there are risks. Exposure, the FDA and the EPA say again, too much. In many of their documents, they're saying we're getting too much. The source is contaminated contaminant. Freedom, no patient consent, infants and children are most at risk. Okay, one of the first things I did in my office, I walked on over and I picked up a toothpaste tube. And I said, okay, well, read the directions. So I picked it up and I read it, and it had changed since I graduated from school, and I read it, and it said, number 1, drug facts. Okay, yeah, it's a drug. Do not swallow. Use a pea-sized amount. And of course, my question was, so how much is a pea-sized amount? So I calculated it on out. Now that's the pea size I used. This is the very day that I was doing it. I was taking pictures of exactly what I was doing. And that's the pea size amount I used. Subsequently, I found out that that pea size amount of toothpaste is twice the pea size amount that the FDA is warning about. Now, usually what you'll see is kind of like a Dairy Queen ice cream cone. It's a lot of toothpaste. Yeah, but that's not what the FDA is talking about. The FDA is concerned about you swallowing half that amount and keep out of reach of children. Now, that's the same pea size of fluoride toothpaste that has 1/4 milligram of fluoride, and that's about the same as 12-ounce glass of water, Dallas water. So here you have the FDA saying, don't swallow, and you have the city saying, you have to swallow. Who do you want to believe? Who do you think has the best scientific judgment on fluoride? I mean, I walked in there and they said, well, they told me all kinds of things. They didn't know what they're talking about. Why? Because I would hope they wouldn't spend their time on studying all this stuff of fluoride. They need to just write out a letter and say, FDA, can we get this proved? That's not the city's job, is to try to sit there and weigh all the evidence. That's the FDA's job. Instead of that, they're relying on the American Dental Association. Okay, now here's one of the things that the EPA has. First of all, National Research Council in 2006 said the maximum contaminant, because fluoride is a contaminant, level goal, that's not protective. The EPA proposes a new reference dose. This is the EPA's kind of term for what they recommend as safe of that contaminant. And this is one of the graphs at 8.1. Now, what they have here is 0.5 to 1 year age, 1 to 4, 4 to 7, 7 to 11, 11 to 14, 14 and above 14 years of age. All the children above the black line are ingesting too much. So these are the children up here that are ingesting too much fluoride, that percentage. But to make it look that good, so that the black line is this high, what they did is they increased the RFD by 33%. Instead of 0.06 like it was or is, they're proposing that they'll change it to 0.08 so that it's actually safer than what they thought. Now, what do we have? National Research Council says it's not protective, it's not safe at 0.06. So the EPA turns around and says, oh, but we're going to raise that and make it say that it's even safer. They're doing the opposite of the National Research Council. And what did they do here? What about children below the half a year of age? They don't count? They don't vote? What's the story here? Why aren't they including it? Because they just aren't taking care of infants. You already have too many problems here with these children. If they put the infants in there, anyone on formula made with Dallas water is getting too much fluoride. 10% not drinking, well, this only goes up to the 90th percentile here. So you have 10% of the people that are above this. So you have a whole bunch of people that are not being protected, and that's the proposed new level, which is less protective than the last one. Dallas infants are getting too much fluoride. So infants on formula are getting about 1/4 milligram per kilogram per day of body weight. I'm putting this all in the same numbers so that you can compare. Mother's milk has in most samples nothing. There's a little bit in some samples. The FDA also says do not swallow. EPA, or maybe 1/4 milligrams okay. EPA says 0.06. Well, now they're raising that to 0.08, maybe. They haven't decided yet for sure. Research is showing that we are starting to get harm at 0.01. That's why there's delays on this thing, because they can't find a safe level that they can stand behind. The goal for my grandchildren is at least 0.01 or less of what I want. Now, this graph here is a really important one. Really important. Follow through with me on this. Did I move ahead on this? Nope, that's right. Okay, this Journal American Dental Association, this is from data of that publication. It was one of the most recent, a reasonable study. None of them are great. None of them on either side. That's part of the reason of the controversy. There's just no good research. But this is one of the best that we have. Okay, now what we have here is people drinking less than 0.3 on the water, 3 to 7, 7 to 12, 7 to 1.2, 1.2 and above. So that's gradually increasing on the fluoride concentration in the water. As we see, my pointer, there we go. This is dental fluorosis on the blue lines. The more fluoride we get in the water, the more dental fluorosis we have. Can you see okay? Is this in the way? Can I move it a bit? Okay. Okay, so what we've got here is we know without a question that dental fluorosis is increasing. The more fluoride you put in the water, the more dental fluorosis. No question about that. Now this is the caries experience. This is what's happening with dental decay in those. And I put a line across the top here. As we increase with fluoride in the water, we can see we increase in dental fluorosis, an absolute biomarker of excess fluoride. Now this is the savings that we may be getting, maybe that much right there. That's how much we're saving. Compared to all this, that's the kids we're saving. And then if you get a little bit more fluoride, then we're going to start to get more dental decay. So there seems to be, and this is consistent research with all of them from when I was in dental school, we seem to have a little bit of a curve where there's a little bit less decay, maybe. That's the sweet spot. Now, where's 0.5 in here? Well, somewhere in here is 0.5. Where's 0.7? Somewhere in there. Can you see the difference between if they shut off the fluoride and they didn't shut off the fluoride? There's no difference. I've never seen any research where they say that it's going to change anything on decay when you lower the fluoride concentration from 0.7 to 0.5. It's just not going to make a difference. That's too small of an amount. Okay, if it was dropping down about that far, then I'd say, oh, well, now we've got some benefit. But what they're saying to us is it's preventing the caries. You know, if they said mitigation, then I'd say, yes, it's maybe mitigating, but it's not preventing decay. Okay, well, hang on a second. Then there's a whole bunch more there. Mother's milk, again, we've talked about mother's milk. They will frequently provide photographs of early childhood caries. But notice how the bottom teeth are reasonably good. This is because a baby's been going to bed with a bottle of milk or a bottle of juice, that type of thing. Okay, and that fluoride's not going to make a difference there. Very important, blood lead levels in fluoridated areas are 2 times higher for whites and 6 times higher for blacks and about 4 times for Hispanics. The city of Dallas says you can minimize the potential of lead exposure by flushing your tap for 30 seconds to 2 minutes before using water for drinking or cooking. Okay, we're talking lead here, not fluoride. Lead increases in fluoridated areas and more for different races. So what the city says is, well, flush it out. Why? Because the acids of the fluoride tend to leach out the lead that's in the fixtures. Again, we see that for blacks, Mexican, Hispanics in the different studies, it all is less. This does hit minorities harder. Texas law, drug definition means a substance intended for use in the prevention of disease in man or animals. We use fluoride to help prevent tooth decay. Okay? Dallas City Hall, that's what they're advertising, that they are using it, that they're marketing it, that they're selling it, that they're administering it to you for a purpose, to prevent dental caries. And Texas law says if it's used for the prevention of disease in man, it is a drug. So we are talking about a drug here. Fluoride is toxic substance. Toxic substances are exempt from poison laws when regulated under drug laws, but the fluoridation of water is not being regulated under drug laws. No toxic substance is a food. Fluoride is not a food. There's no physiologic requirement. The absence of fluoride does not cause any disease. No foods are even close to the toxicity of fluoride. And of course, mother's milk is a good example. Congress defines drugs as articles intended for use in the prevention of disease. It doesn't make a difference if it works. That doesn't make a difference. It's the intent that makes it. The FDA testified to Congress that fluoride is a drug. The FDA CDR has jurisdiction, and they're the ones to weigh the benefit. Again, the FDA confirms in Freedom of Information requests, it's not a drug. The FDA advises manufacturers, which is the city of Dallas, of unapproved drugs, which fluoridated water is an unapproved drugs, are usually fully aware that their drugs are marketed illegally. Yet they continue to circumvent the law and put consumers' health at risk. Who's the largest illegal drug manufacturer in Dallas? The city. And you have no choice. The FDA has rejected 35 new applications for fluoride supplements. Those are the pills that are prescribed by the doctor because there's no substantial evidence of drug effectiveness as prescribed, recommended, or suggested in labeling. It's not to say they haven't tried to get approval, they just can't get it because the research doesn't show that it's good. The evidence is complete. What do we mean by that? Well, there's not one randomized controlled trial prospective. Socioeconomic status is usually not controlled. Inadequate size on many of them. Difficulty in diagnosing decay because of delayed diagnosis. Delay in tooth eruption. Vitamin D diet's not controlled. No measured blood or urine fluoride concentrations. Oral habits are not considered. Some may brush and some may not. Lifetime benefit is not evaluated. Estimating or assuming subjects actually drink the water is not considered. Measured dental treatment expenses are not included. Breastfeeding and infant formula, not considered. Fraud or gross areas genetics, and they don't even keep track of whether some kids are going to the dentist more or not. The EPA scientists say, through their union, in summary, We hold that fluoridation is an unreasonable risk. That is, the toxicity of fluoride is so great, and the purported benefits associated with it are so small, if there are any at all. And I remember stopping there, and I couldn't even finish the rest of it when I first read that. What do they mean by that? That requiring every man, woman, and child in America to ingest it borders on criminal behavior on the part of governments. Amen. They also say the process by which EPA arrived at the recommended maximum contaminant level for fluoride is scientifically irrational and displays an unprofessional review of relevant scientific data. The target population for systemic swallowing fluoride has theoretical benefit while the enamel is developing. That's up to ages 6 to 8. That's theoretical, okay? That's National Research Council and Health and Human Services. It makes no sense to mass medicate 100% of the population when only 10% of the population might benefit and 41% of that 10% are ingesting too much. Fluoride prevents dental caries predominantly after eruption of the tooth into the mouth, and its actions are primarily topical for both adults and children. Now, CDC is not CDC's task to determine what levels of fluoride in water are safe. Okay, that's EPA for naturally occurring, and if it's a drug, that's FDA. Many have excess fluoride in their serum. Studies are showing that there's more than what should be. Now, in dental school, this is basically what I saw. Decay was going down. I got this out of the CDC webpage, and dental fluoridation populations were increasing. Okay? Now, years later, this is what we have. It's continuing to go up. More people are getting fluoridated, and the dental decay rate's dropping down. Well, that shows it's beneficial, right? Now, if you sit there and really think about it, what we've got is 17% more people are being fluoridated, and there's a 70% reduction in decay. That's just impossible unless you took it and targeted it to each individual. Those two are not related. This is a very important graph to me because here you have 1930, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, and 90. That timeline. We had about 11 to 12 cavities per 12-year-old at this point. When fluoridation really took over in the early 60s, would have been effective around the early 70s, but somewhere around in here, that's when fluoridation took over. What caused the drop in decay between here and there? No one knows. None of the research ever includes that huge, confounding, crushing effect on dental caries. Who's to say that this just didn't continue on down here and fluoridation had nothing to do with the drop in dental caries? And what about toothpaste? Did that really show any benefit? No. When we compare countries of the world, here are them that don't fluoridate, and here are those that do. Again, we find all similar dropping of dental decay regardless of dental fluoridation. Fluoride salts, same thing. Makes no difference. On this one, I ranked the 50 states of the United States here with the whole percentage of the population fluoridated all the way along here. So this gets very little fluoride, this gets a lot of fluoride. Then I ranked a survey by the National Survey of Children's Health, federal government one, of those reporting very good to excellent teeth that are high income, right across here. And you can see that there's no benefit from fluoridation. It's all about the same. About 82% of the children in North America that are wealthy, they're doing pretty well. Then I put in the low-income children, and I can see that there's more randomness here, but still, not really any common cause with fluoridation. We do see a huge difference between the poor and the rich. And that's where I made my mistake. I was comparing somebody who walked in with good teeth, and I go, whoa, yeah, they must have had fluoride. The next person came in, lousy teeth, they didn't have fluoride. That's pretty obvious, you see. I'm the doctor, I know. What I was really looking at was socioeconomics. I was comparing the rich and the poor. That was my problem. Higher income, better teeth, but there's no significant common cause. Here's a study in Portland, Oregon, right near where I'm at, and Vancouver, Washington. For children, it was actually cheaper what's never been fluoridated than in the fluoridated Washington. Now, the whole study came out with enough money in savings to pay for the repairs of the equipment. There wasn't enough measured cost benefit, and that's the only reasonable. This was not just a poverty kids or anything like this. This was two different groups of Kaiser Permanente patients in clinics. So this is the only study that's showing it, and it didn't have benefit. Now in school, when I was there, they said, well, it hasn't been around long enough for us to have a cost benefit. That's been going on now for many years, and we still don't have a measured cost benefit. Anybody here that for every dollar that's spent on fluoridation, $38 are saved? I'm sure many of you have seen that, yeah. Okay, well, that's all estimates of assumptions. Kind of like balancing your checkbook, assuming you have money there. Okay, here's some dental fluorosis. And would it be better to have this light off in the back?
Yeah, you can go ahead and cut
Maybe
it.
somebody could turn that, if that's possible. I don't know if the light is going to be turned off back
Someone
there.
needs to go unplug it. Just unplug it.
It's up to you. You guys know better what's happening on the lights. But here's dental fluorosis. And this child, 41% of the children now have dental fluorosis. I did not do the work. Dr. Marcus did it. Excellent job. Beautiful. And that's that young man. He'll have to have that replaced many times throughout his life, unfortunately. Here's an electron microscope of dental fluorosis. Dental fluorosis is a biomarker of excess fluoride exposure. Now, to assume that you swallow the fluoride, it goes through your body and it comes out only on the teeth, it's just not going to happen. Okay? It's just not going to happen that you're going to have just dental fluorosis and no skeletal fluorosis, no thyroid, no brains or anything like that problems. Okay, but we can see how it creates more potential for dental caries. This is the dental fluorosis. Back in 1950, about 10%. Now we're getting about 41% of children with dental fluorosis. That means we've been constantly getting more and more fluoride. This is Dr. Lineback. He said, let's look at this thing more scientifically, but in real simple terms. He wrote a textbook that was great. Not enough fluoride gets into the enamel during tooth formation to make a difference in caries protection. Fluoride does incorporate into the enamel after tooth eruption. Not enough from drinking water to make a difference. Fluoride does make fluoroapatite in the decalcified areas under plaque, and that's how topical fluoride works. Systemic fluoride accumulates in dentin throughout life because dentin continues to grow in thickness and does not turn over. Our research shows fluoritic dentin is changed and may be more brittle. So I go, well, maybe more brittle. Let's look at the research on brittle, okay? When we looked at this is a tooth that's lost a cusp. This is where it was fallen off, and this is where it came off because it was broken. In the area, a study in the area where there was no fluoridation, there were 2% of the visits were because of cusp fractures. In a partly fluoridated area, 19% of the visits were because of cusp fracture. In a highly fluoridated area, 7% of the visits were because of cusp fractures. Now, you know, that's how I make a living, was with broken teeth. But where are the studies for this that the Dental Association is coming out with? National Research Council was unanimous agreement that it's not safe. Why? Well, these are some of the different things that they raised of concerns. Tooth damage, rheumatoid osteoarthritic like pain, bone cancer, bone fractures, thyroid reduction, kidney damage, reproductive problems, lower IQ, allergies, gastrointestinal disorders. Those were some of the significant points. Nuremberg Code prohibited experimentation on patients without their consent or knowledge. Human Subjects Review Committee, and all universities have this that I know of. When you're going to do studies, human subjects asked to contribute their time and effort to research should consent to do so freely. The consent should be given only after the subject understands what he or she is consenting to and any risks that may be involved. Subjects should be assured that there will be no penalties for declining to participate and that they are free to withdraw from the research at any time after they have given their initial consent. How many of you have given consent to be fluoridated in this experiment that nobody's keeping track of?
Not me.
No. And so this is something that is from the 50s. You know, they should know better by now. The American Dental Association does not have jurisdiction, it says. The American Dental Association owes no legal duty of care to protect the public from allegedly dangerous products. Dissemination of information relating to the practice of dentistry does not create a duty of care to protect the public from potential injury. When the Water District says, well, we're relying on the American Dental Association, I heard them today. And the councilman saying, well, we rely on the American Dental Association. Well, they have no duty. Does your councilman have a duty to protect the public? Yes, but the councilman doesn't realize that the American Dental Association, who they're relying on, they don't care about the public. They're there to protect the dentists. Pardon? Okay. A number of recent cessation studies show that stopping fluoridation does literally nothing to increase oral decay. Modern studies have difficulty in measuring the benefits of fluoridation between fluoridated and non-fluoridated communities. Not taking into account delayed tooth eruption makes early fluoridation studies overestimates of the benefits. Fluoride added to drinking water may have simply delayed caries in the past. Here's another interesting thing. American Dental Association awarded Kentucky with a 50-year award for 100% fluoridation in 2003. 42% didn't even have any teeth. Number 1 in the nation. Where's the benefit? With 1.6 to 4 parts per million fluoride in the water, 50% or more past the age of 24 have false teeth because of fluoride damage. That's a Journal of American Dental Association. Connecticut, Detroit, Boston all report a crisis of dental caries. A crisis of dental caries. They're all fluoridated, been fluoridated for many years. Okay, I'm going to leave it at that, because there's other people that need to get on up here, and I've gone a little bit past. Is that okay? Yeah, I think in real simple terms, right here, the FDA regulates substances which have the intent to treat people. The EPA regulates contaminants in water, right, Paul? National Sanitation Foundation is a private organization responsible for substances added to treat water, right? Okay, I want to get that straight. Okay, so when we look at the EPA, they're not looking at added fluoride, okay? That's not their job. It's the FDA when you look at it for prevention of disease, intent of treatment. That's FDA, and we need to get FDA approval. The problem is the FDA said no so far. And every city that I've talked to refuses to even write a letter to the FDA and ask them. They don't want to know. Any questions, because there's lots more and we can do more questions later and I can answer more later. Any questions specifically that you might have of what I presented here? You know, when I first started out in school and for years after, did I diagnose dental fluorosis? Nope. Why? No big deal. I'm not gonna diagnose it, because what am I gonna do? Make money off of what purpose? There's no reason to diagnose it in my mind at that time. Since I've been concerned and spent nearly over 10,000 hours in studying on this stuff, I diagnosed in Portland, Oregon. I was diagnosing about 30% of the kids with dental fluorosis that had never had fluoridation. I mean, it's huge. Even without fluoridated water, many are getting too much fluoride. And yet I go to the next office, and guess what they're doing? Automatically, routine, fluoride varnish. And I say, but this person has dental fluorosis. They have a toxic overexposure of fluoride. Why are you giving them more fluoride? What's the purpose of giving them more fluoride when they already have a toxic exposure to the fluoride? And the dentists get really mad at me. Anyway, okay, question. Why do we measure medicines by dose except fluoride where we use concentration? That's a really good question. Concentration in the water, because we're not thinking about dose in the human. But if you went to the pharmacist, I love going to the pharmacies and they say, I'm wanting some fluoride to swallow. Do you have any fluoride here that I can swallow? And they'll say, well, you need a prescription. Oh, I need a prescription for that? Well, I guess I could drink water and get it without a prescription, couldn't I? Yeah, or I could maybe swallow your toothpaste and get it without a prescription. Yeah. Actually, I'm a dentist. Is fluoride, your supplements here, is it FDA approved? Well, I'm sure it is. And they'll go check if I ask them to, and they'll come back and say, well, it's not approved. And I'll say, is it your habit to be selling unapproved illegal drugs here? And they have taken them off the shelf because they're just not aware that it's not approved, okay? So that was the only question. I don't have a good answer for you on that one. Sorry, I wish I did. Okay.
do questions at the end too, because what we had said was Dr. Conant may cover some of your questions, and then at the end, they'll all come up here and we'll pass the mic to, so you can be thinking more, writing your questions down. I have a couple things to say. In Dallas, he referred to the water in Dallas having 0.5 parts per million. I made, I think, enough copies for all of you people here. The water department's been very forthcoming. They test the Dallas water every 4 hours, and they do a good job. I'm not saying that they're not doing a good job at all. They're very precise in what they do. Well, one of the forms I have, because there's 3 lakes that come into the Dallas water. They test them all, and then they decide how much they're going to treat everything, and then you've got the tap. I got enough copies. This was April 25th of this year, but there's been more. And on this particular day, the raw fluoride level, because that's the untreated, they call it raw, was already at 0.74. Now, you've heard all over the place they're treating to 0.7, right? The raw water coming in from that lake was that high. Okay, so the tap water for all the 3 combined rivers that day was 0.69. And Kenneth Del Rango, who is the production director, he said, well, that day the pump would not go on. And we've already discussed, what about the pumps? Could the pumps make a mistake? Could something happen? Supposedly this doesn't happen. You know, I think about all the risks with this contaminant. What could happen? I mean, it burns through cement. How much is the cost of containment and clothes and the risk to the workers? I keep bringing up all these things because we have enough fluoride in the raw water. Why are they even adding the liability to the city for 0.2 parts per million? It doesn't make sense. It's stupid. It's wrong. It's ridiculous. And when I first started this, it was like, this is going to be a no-brainer. Once we put all the pieces together, they're going to see this. I mean, it's so clear-cut. It really is. There is no smoke and mirrors. There's no secrets about this. If you just look at how much is already in there, it's a no-brainer to leave it alone with all the risks that are attached. Another thing I want to say real quickly is I have another document because, and I made copies. I don't know if I have enough for everybody, but if you want one, I can get you one. And it has to do with the disproportionate effect in the ethnic communities, the Black and the Hispanic communities. And all the city council was given this document. They were given this document, and they're still kind of chewing on it. And today, a few of them still didn't want to talk to me, but we're working on it. So, call to action. I'm going to mention this a few times. Call the council. Don't say, I don't live in Dallas. Guess what? 25 cities buy Dallas water. Go to our website. Look at the different things. The Quality of Life and Environment Committee explained to the councilman because he asked, one of the women asked, what do these other cities do if they don't want fluoride, but Dallas is fluoridating? She literally said, and this is Jody Puckett, the director over all the water, they can't do anything because they're getting our water. So there's another level of interest there that you need to drum up with other people, you know? But that was the question. Sorry. I am very excited about another person that's on our program tonight. This dentist, so he's accredited with the International Academy of Oral Medicine and Toxicology. He's a member of the ADA for 36 years. He's the Texas Dental Association. He got the Honorable Order of Good Fellow, and he practices in an anti-fluoride clinic, it's his, in Park Cities. And I want you to welcome him because he's going to come up and explain what's going on with his practice and why he's doing it. So would you come forward and talk to us for a few minutes? And welcome him. And I really, the stigma attached to people, honestly, Sheffy got, and actually several people are like, man, as soon as I talk about fluoride, everybody gets down on me and tells me it's bad. But here you go. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Well, basically, I am a wet-fingered dentist. That's what we call ourselves. I still practice, have been practicing for actually 38 years. And I just wanted you to know that I do believe in being fluoride-free. The FDA just seems to drag their feet on mercury in the dental amalgams and fluoride. Why am I still a member of the American Dental Association? I've been asked. Well, I'm trying to make changes from within. And I appreciate all you trying to change things from without. It's been said that part of the rationale for putting fluoride in the water is for the lower socioeconomic groups, for maybe certain minority groups. But, you know, minority groups tend to have a lot of high blood pressure issues. I myself have high blood pressure issues. So I've been thinking, it's like, why don't we put my high blood pressure medicine in the water supply? And if your high blood pressure is extra high, then you could just drink more water. And those that don't need as much high blood pressure medicine, they could just drink less water. We won't really know exactly what your dosage is, as was said, but I mean, it would just make sense that everybody could benefit from having high blood pressure medicine in their water supply. So I think Dr. Cornett might even mention something like that, but there just is no reason to put drugs and medications intended to change the host, the body, in the general water supply for indiscriminate use. And that's part of why my practice is located in University Park, which does not add fluoride and has never added fluoride to the water supply.
Very much. Thank you. Okay. So I also want to recognize there's a candidate in the audience. I heard him speak the other day. It's Mark Clayton. He's at the back. Raise your hand. Everybody turn around and see Mark. Okay. He's actually running for Sheffy Kadane's position because Sheffy has run out the terms that he could run again. So he's started early getting on the ballot. I don't know. Are you officially on the ballot? Yeah. Yes. Okay. Well, he came tonight. There were 5 that I talked to. One was going to be out of town, and I thought the other ones would be here. So if anyone else shows up, I'll let you know. But now I have to do one more thing. Okay. Another thing. I went to a health expo. And this is part of being an activist. So people, this is what you have to do when you want to get your message out. Because, like I say, we don't have our normal avenues, and if you don't have tons of money, you got to go where the people are. So in Addison, they had a health expo a couple weeks ago, and so I thought, perfect place. I was so welcome there. When this one lady kissed me on the cheek, oh, you're fighting fluoride, which you will find as you talk to people. Most people are like, yeah, I've heard that's bad. It's, unfortunately, a lot of the dentists and the people in charge, like at City Hall, they're the ones that are still promoting it. Well, I met this young lady, and she's going to come forward and tell us something, but let me tell you. This is Nancy Addison, and she is a third-generation Dallasite. She's a spokeswoman for health and well-being, and she has a radio show. It's on Mondays, I know that. It's on Mondays at 6 to 7? 6 to 7. She's written a book, and she also has columns in Celebration magazine. She's well known. She's a nutritionist. She's a chef. I know that too. And a health counselor? Yes. Nancy's very knowledgeable about the environment and toxins in the environment. So she's going to come forward and tell us a bit about her experience in helping people. And what happened was, I saw her book, and then I was talking to her, and she goes, oh my, I have a chapter on there. She opened it up, and Dr. Connett's name was in it, and I said, he's coming to Dallas next week. She goes, oh, I want to come. Let me come. So then I said, well, come on up and give us a word about what you're doing about fluoride. Thank you.
It was so fun meeting Regina, and when she started talking to me about water, I was married to an environmental trial lawyer for 23 years, and so I started learning 27 years ago about water quality and air quality and all the toxins in our environment. And I dramatically changed our lives because my family had been dying of cancer and heart disease and all kinds of health situations. And we had been the people going to the doctor every year, doing everything they said, taking all the drugs, and nobody was getting well. And so when my father died of cancer when my son was 1 year old, I started looking at my health situation and thinking, you know, I want to see my grandkids grow up. And so I got drugs out of the house, and I considered all pharmaceutical drugs and things drugs. And my husband being an environmental trial lawyer, I knew all about waste, toxic waste from factories, from all kinds of incinerators and landfills and things like that. One of the things I learned way back then was that this fluoride isn't even the fluoride they tested on teeth. It's not even the one that would work on the enamel, if they even used it. That this was literally toxic waste from an industry that makes chemical fertilizers and pesticides, and they didn't want to spend the money to have to dispose of it illegally, and they convinced well-meaning people that this was the fluoride that actually would help dental health. And so what they're doing is literally dumping toxic waste into our water because they don't want to pay to have it deposited properly. And I just think that's criminal. Also, I counsel people on health and nutrition, and one of the things that I tell my people first thing out of the chute is you cannot drink the tap water here. Absolutely, without a doubt, it will not help your health at all. And one of the sad things is most people are extremely dehydrated. One of the main causes of diseases today is chronic intercellular dehydration. And so if you are afraid to drink the tap water because of all the chemicals and drugs that are put in it, then, you know, that just, I think, exacerbates the problem. And I think it particularly hurts the poor, less economically soluble groups because they can't afford to go to the grocery store and buy the pure water. And so I think in many ways what they're doing by adding this to our water, it's creating really bad problems with everyone across the board. I had this one client who came to me and she had some really bad health problems, and I knew she was drinking tap water. And I said, if you don't do anything else, stop drinking that tap water and get a purifier for your shower head so that you are not showering with it, because you can absorb up to 8 glasses of water in one shower. And you know, they put medicine in patches on your skin for a reason. It goes straight into your bloodstream. Well, she's got off the tap water. I don't think she did anything else, but she stopped doing the tap water and she got a purifier for her shower. And within a week, her health had really changed dramatically, and she was feeling better and she had more energy. But, you know, we tell our kids don't take drugs, and yet constantly saying, here, take this pill to solve this problem. And I think psychologically, in their subconscious, they're seeing that hypocrisy. And if we don't want our kids to be taking drugs or trying to solve their problem with a quick fix pill, then we need to stop doing it ourselves. And we need to stop doing it to them. And really, I love this city. I'm third generation. I've grown up here. And I think many times people just aren't aware of the situation involved. And I think our city council members, and thank you so much for being so aware and conscious. You know, I think once people really get the facts, and they can weigh it and go, yes, this isn't even the fluoride that would work, even if it did. Yes, it's costing us $1 million, and we don't need to do it. And we're poisoning our own people with a drug that's not even okayed by the FDA. I mean, it really doesn't make any sense. So I am very hopeful that more city council members will will do the right thing and take the drugs out of our water. And I'm so grateful y'all all came today, and thank you for asking me to come.
Yeah, Nancy will be here. All these people will be here if you want to get their contact information, you know, how you can listen to her show. We're trying to move the program along because there's so much to say and so much to do. One more time, you know, activism is going to make a difference. If you go to the website at the top, right there, you click that link, it brings you to the page. All you got to do is fill out this simple little form, and it sends an email to all the city council at once. It's really cool. It's really easy. You know, you need to do that. And there's also a petition, an online petition that was started, I don't know, a couple weeks ago. I don't know how many hundred we have on there now, but I heard from 2 people today that at the city hall that it is making a difference. So go to the website, fill out the petition. Now, without further ado, I guess is what you say, Dr. Connett is amazing. He's a hero to me for many reasons, and he's got that English accent. So I loved when he came to the city council. You know, he just blew him away. You got it. There's also a YouTube of when he came and spoke before the city council, and in 3 minutes he explained everything, and then he got to expand for a few minutes more. When you're talking to the city council, push them to have a briefing so that they can hear a lot of this stuff before them. But Dr. Connett has only 2 copies of his book out on the table. So they're autographed copies for $20, and you can see all the research that's in them. And what he has said about this book is he's written this book. It has like 80 pages of references, okay? And there's never been any, how do you put it? There's never been any written response. So what they like to do is demonize us and say we don't have anything to talk about or whatever. But when there is something to talk about, they like to ignore it. So Dr. Connett, 18 years he's been studying fluoridation because his wife kind of pushed him into it. So he was studying waste management and incineration and dioxin. So well respected, so well paid. He was a 30-year professor of chemistry. He had his life going very well. And then his wife told him about fluoride. And once he got the taste, just like Dr. Osmondson, it's been 18 years of him trying to expose it to people and being ridiculed for it and running from one city and country to another. But we are very lucky to have him here tonight. I want him to get to his program. Please welcome Dr. Paul Connett. Woo!
Well, I cannot pretend that this 18 years has been a bed of roses. It's been perhaps the most frustrating campaign I've ever been involved with, and I've been involved with many, and I won't bore you with what they are. But the compensation that I've had for this is that around the world, I've met the most fantastic people fighting this issue. We're certainly not a majority. But the people fighting this are very, very special people. People like yourselves who come to this meeting. You didn't come here to make money. You didn't come here to get power. You came here because you care about your kids, you care about your grandkids, you care about your community, and hopefully some of you care about honest science and the need for honest science to inform public health policy. So I count myself remarkably privileged. And when I think of this evening, you've got 3 people here that I really do enormously respect and are role models for every campaign around the world. First of all, you've got this bubbly giant of a woman, Regina, who's just absolutely. One of the extraordinary bits of biology I learned at school, and I didn't learn much, was that mushrooms were able to pierce through concrete. And I think of Regina as a mushroom bursting through concrete. And then another great person and somebody I respect greatly is Bill Osmondson. I mean, he risked a huge amount I didn't risk a huge amount coming out as a faculty, tenured faculty member coming out against fluoridation. But Bill risked a great deal, but he's persevered, and it's not often that a professional person will come out in public and say, I got it wrong, I made a mistake, and now I'm going to speak the truth. That's fantastic. And the third person is your counselor here. I've spoken before many city councillors, and it's rare to have somebody who just speaks the truth, the plain truth, and does what he thinks is right, regardless of what crap the other side is going to throw at him for doing that. So I think you should be very, very proud. I'm just sad to hear that your tenure is you're going to the end of your career on that, but hopefully you can work with Regina and make this group a really formidable force here in Dallas. Okay, well, as you heard, I've been involved for 29 years fighting incinerators and promoting more sustainable alternatives. And that has taken me to 49 states in the US, 7 provinces in Canada, and 61 other countries, 62 in a few weeks. I never expected that to happen. And I say that by way of saying that when my wife asked me to get involved with fluoridation, I was so busy doing this and teaching chemistry full time. I really didn't want a third issue, and I didn't want one that was going to stigmatize me as Looney Tunes. So last year, I published this book. It's called The Zero Waste Solution, Untrashing the Planet One Community at a Time. I'm one of those people that do not think that the great changes on this planet are going to come from the top. I think they're going to come from the bottom, from one community at a time. Anyway, I was delighted when Jeremy Irons, a well-known British film actor who hosted this movie, Trashed, he agreed to write the foreword to that particular book. So I hope you'll get a chance to, all the profits go to the organization, not to me, but I hope you get a chance to read that. Maybe order it for your library. Now, as far as fluoridation is concerned, that's 18 years ago. And at the time I was introduced to this, I was a professor of chemistry. My specialty was environmental chemistry and toxicology. And since then, as Regina said, I published this book, The Case Against Fluoride, in October 2010. Now, what she didn't say is, it's not my book, it's our book. The best decision I've made in 18 years was to ask both this gentleman, James Beck, MD, PhD, a retired professor of physics at the University of Calgary, and Spedding Micklem, a professor of biology trained in Oxford who taught at Edinburgh University. They made this book. They set the tone of this book. They understated, not overstated. They made sure everything was documented meticulously. And as Regina said, there's 80 pages of references. So one of the ways I persuaded Jim, I said, Jim, if you co-author this book, it's going to give you some strength when you're trying to get it out of Calgary. And that's exactly what he did. After the publication of this book, he was able to get the Calgary Council to stop fluoridation. And that liberated 1.2 million people. So this is interesting that 3 people wrote this book, because what I'm getting a lot of personal attacks. I'm misrepresenting the literature. I'm doing all these things. The proponents of fluoridation feel it's only necessary to attack the messenger, not to deal with the message. It's a standard technique, been years. It's good. When that happens, you know your arguments are strong. Because if the arguments were weak, they go for the arguments. If your arguments are strong, they go for you. But I had to point out to them, I said, you're attacking me for what's in that book, but that was written by three scientists. And I'm pretty secure, very secure. I sometimes shoot from the hip, but these guys don't. They're very, very, cool, calm, collected, and scientific and all that stuff. Okay. So, fluoridation has fossilized into a belief system. If you listen carefully, I believe in fluoridation. I believe it's safe and effective. I believe this because that was what I was taught at dental school, and now I'm too busy to read anything. Well, I'm going to start with some good news. Some good news. There are better ways of fighting tooth decay in low-income families. I think we all agree that tooth decay is a function of poverty. Most of the tooth decay in America is concentrated in low-income families, about 80% of the tooth decay and about 20% of the population. And we definitely need to target those families with better dental services, better dental education, and better diet. Now, whilst we're talking about better dental services, 80% of dentists in this country will not treat children on Medicaid. So how can we take seriously their concern about poor children? And that's the reason that you're going to put fluoride in the water for poor children. This is hypocrisy. Anyway, children of low-income families shouldn't be forced to swallow a substance that their parents cannot avoid. And secondly, we know it's worse for low-income people because low-income people will normally, statistically, will have a poorer diet. And a poor diet makes fluoride's toxicity worse. Low protein, low calcium, low vitamins makes fluoride's toxicity worse. So you've trapped this community and it's worse for them. But in Scotland, they do not have water fluoridation in Scotland. But for the last 10 years or so, they've had this Child Smile program. And what it involves is starting with nursery school, kindergarten, the youngest children, they are taught in class to brush their teeth. And also the teachers are instructed to give them healthy diet with vegetables and carrots and things. And at the same time they're doing that with the children, they're also working with the parents to make sure that the parents are educated on what diet is necessary for good teeth and so on. And they get checkups, annual checkups, and treatment if needed, including fluoride varnishes if they feel it's necessary. Now, it's been very successful. The proportion of children aged 4 to 6 with no obvious dental decay has risen from 42% in '96 to 67% in 2012, and even more impressive for the 10 to 12-year-olds, it's gone from 53% to 73% in 2013. They are way ahead of schedule here, and according to researchers, that's from the Scottish government, and according to researchers from a BBC Scotland report, Glasgow researchers found that the scheme had reduced the cost of treating dental disease in 5-year-olds by more than half between 2001 and 2010. So this is simple, it's elegant, and it can achieve more than just that. So our kids need more brushing, more fruit and vegetables, less sugar, and high fructose corn syrup, which is in everything, less sugar. Don't forget, 1 year before the US Public Health Service endorsed fluoridation, the sugar lobby, 133 sugar interests, said we need to find a way to reduce tooth decay without reducing sugar consumption. And they went on to push fluoridation. Less sugar means less tooth decay and less obesity. So less obesity means less diabetes, less heart attacks, less cancer, many other things. So I know the first thing that people are going to say when you say we need to put money into education, where are you going to get that money from? But if the spin-off for fighting tooth decay is to reduce obesity, then this is going to save this country billions of dollars. This is a great investment. Because now we've got teenagers with type 2 diabetes, they're going to have lifelong treatment, lifelong drugs treating that, and that's going to cost the country billions of dollars. So, in other words, education to promote less sugar consumption is a very good investment. We need education, not fluoridation, to fight tooth decay and obesity. Now, I would be very much like to hear from people maybe in weeks to come. I'll give you my email address. One of our problems that Bill and others and I have is we overwhelm people. We give people so much information that they don't remember too much of it. All they remember is, oh, he was a good speaker, or he was this, that, and the other. But that's no good to us. It's not going to do you any good to say, well, I heard Paul Connett, and he said it's a load of rubbish. I don't remember what he said, but he said it was a load of rubbish, and I trust him. I believe in him. Then we're back to the same side. That's what they're saying. I trust my dentist, and so on. So I want to see how many of these arguments you remember, okay? I want you to well, you don't have to do it to me, but just make some notes afterwards. See if you can, without cribbing, without taking notes now, see how much you actually remember over the next few days, weeks, months. So here are the arguments against fluoridation. Spell them out one at a time. It's unusual. It is unnatural. It is unethical. It is unnecessary. It is unsafe. And it is ineffective. Okay, so Bill has covered this beautifully, the ineffective, and he certainly brushed upon the unethical, and we've heard that from other people. Now let's see how many of the others that you can remember. We'll go through them one at a time. So first one, fluoridation is unusual. The vast majority of countries do not fluoridate their water. It is unusual. Now, this is important because there are people walking around the United States think that this is the norm, that cities that are not fluoridated, like Portland, are meant to be behind progress. They're not with the norm, what people are doing. In fact, they are in the majority. The people that don't drink fluoridated water are in the majority on this planet. That over half the people drinking fluoridated water live in North America. 97% of Europe is not fluoridated. 97%. And there are some countries which fluoridate their salt, like Austria, France, Germany, and Switzerland. But the vast majority of countries neither fluoridate their salt nor their water. There are a few more from former Eastern European countries, Czech Republic, Slovakia, and Spain, which also has some water fluoridation. But again, the majority of European countries neither fluoridate their water nor their salt. And yet, according to the World Health Organization, tooth decay in 12-year-olds is coming down as fast in non-fluoridated countries as fluoridated ones. And Bill showed you a graph, and I'll split it up. If you were living in one of these fluoridated countries, you could point to these graphs. Look, fluoridation is working. Look, with the time, the tooth decay in 12-year-olds is coming down. You say, wait a moment, have a look at these non-fluoridated countries and look at the rate with which the tooth decay is coming down. And put them all together. This is the graph that Bill showed. But here, look, this is 12-year-olds. Can you tell which of those has grown up in a fluoridated and a non-fluoridated country? I don't think you can. So that's so obviously countries which are not fluoridating water are not suffering the great calamity that we are told will happen if Dallas was to stop. Second, fluoridation is unnatural. Now, you'll notice with the propaganda that the promoters put out, you'll find the word natural. Count the word natural that you see on those pamphlets. Fluoride naturally occurs in water. This one I just saw just a few days ago in Prince George, British Columbia. Fluoridation, Mother Nature thought of it first. Fiddlesticks! Fiddlesticks! If Mother Nature gave us a very good guide on this issue, which I shall get to in a moment. They are confusing. This naturally occurs in water. They're confusing geology with biology. The amount of fluoride that you have in the water depends upon what rocks you have nearby. Nature didn't have anything to do with what those rocks are. That's geology. That came before nature. Geology, rocks, water. And just because something occurs naturally in water too does not make it safe. Arsenic naturally occurs in water. There are millions of people on our planet who have their lives ruined by naturally occurring arsenic and naturally occurring fluoride. I mean millions. So, but nature has passed a verdict on fluoride after the rocks, after evolution, or during evolution, if you like. This is nature's verdict, and Bill has already referred to it. The level in fluoride in mother's milk is extremely low. Extremely low. And this was the fact 18 years ago that made me realize there was something wrong here. Because if you believe the American Dental Association, every single woman on this planet is deficient in fluoride. Every single woman. We're not talking about deficiencies which come about because the woman herself does not have an adequate diet. But this is nature's verdict that the baby does not need fluoride. And it wasn't as if life evolved in the absence of fluoride, that this has come much later. Life grew out of the sea, the primeval slurp. The level of fluoride in seawater is 1.4 parts per million. So if nature could find a use for fluoride, she would have gladly grabbed it and used it. But there's not one biochemical reaction in the human body that needs fluoride. Not one. So nature has held this fluoride away. So when they say, oh, it's everywhere, it's in the rocks, it's in the water. Yes. Don't you see that what makes you such a reckless decision? There wasn't a shortage for nature to draw upon fluoride, but she didn't do it. It isn't in our bodies doing anything worthwhile, and it isn't in mother's milk where you would expect it to be if the baby needed it for healthy teeth, healthy bones, or healthy anything. What this means, of course, is that a bottle-fed baby in a place like Dallas is getting, in the case of Dallas, is getting 175 times more fluoride than nature intended. So the mother's milk protects our babies from fluoride. And in my view, it's reckless to circumvent that protection and put it in the water so that the uninformed citizen who's bottle feeding their baby is going to be giving that baby far too much fluoride. So the third argument is that fluoridation is unethical. We should never use the public water supply to deliver any medical treatment. At least two, Bill and Nancy here, both mentioned that. We've never done it. And so did the dentist. We have never done it with any other drug, any other medication, any other human treatment, any other vitamin, if you like. We've never used the public water supply to deliver medication. Yes, we put a lot of chemicals in the water, but that's to treat the water. This is exceptional when we use the water supply to deliver a drug for obvious reasons, which people have already mentioned tonight. Number one, you can't control the dose. An absolute no-no for pharmacy. Number two, you can't control who gets it. It goes to elderly people, it goes to sick people, it goes to people with poor nutrition, it goes to babies. It goes to people with poor kidney function who cannot get rid of as much fluoride as a normal kidney, a normal person with a normal kidney. And that's bad because half the fluoride that you take in each day, the kidney gets rid of. The other half accumulates in your bones. If you have poor kidney function, then the rate of accumulation in the bones is going to be greater, and your bones are going to get more brittle earlier than other people. And also, another person that should not get fluoride is people with borderline iodine deficiency. About 12 million people in this country don't have enough iodine. And we know that fluoride is particularly bad on the thyroid if you've also got borderline iodine deficiency. But it's totally indiscriminate. Of course, they love that indiscriminate thing because it goes to everybody. Nobody has to think about it. Nobody has to do anything. They just drink water in the normal way and they're getting, they say, treatment. But as Bill has said, the treatment isn't worth very much. And the third argument for being unethical is it violates the individual's right to informed consent to medication. Another way of saying that is that in Dallas, your council is doing to everyone what an individual doctor in Dallas can do to no one. An individual doctor could not do this to you. To force an individual to take a medicine without their consent. It's unethical to force fluoridation on people who can't afford to avoid it. It's being prescribed and administered by people who are not medically trained. There's no agency monitoring side effects. There is no agency measuring exposure levels. This is just lousy medicine. Every single thing I'm saying is lousy medicine. Where are the doctors in Dallas? Well, are you standing by? Don't you read your Bible? What about that Good Samaritan? The Good Samaritan crossed the road because his fellow citizen was his enemy, actually, was injured. Where are the doctors? I really want to know. Where are the doctors? There's one here. There are two here. There's no. I'm sorry, that gets me upset because we should, as a professional, I think if you've got trained, if you've got qualifications, if God gave you some brain cells, then part of your thing is not just to make money for yourself, but to share your skills and help the community. And you'll be a happier person if you do that. I've experienced this. I've experienced what it was like as a professor of chemistry to be paid to teach students. And I also had experienced what it was like to leave the classroom and without money for pro bono to go and help communities. That made me much happier, much more meaning in my life. So that's, I think, something that we all need to learn. We teach our kids that life is about making money. It isn't. Life is about finding meaning. Some people should not be exposed to fluoride. I've mentioned it already. That's unethical to expose them. Black, Hispanic, and other communities of color appear to be more sensitive to fluoride. We've already heard from Bill that the dental fluorosis rates are higher in black communities and Hispanic communities, and that information has not been communicated to those communities. No agency accepts responsibility for harm if and when it is demonstrated. So if this issue begins to grow and there are hearings in front of the council, doubtless the ADA will push into, and the Pew Foundation and the others will push into your council. Lots of people saying the ADA supports this, the FDA, no, they don't mean the FDA, the CDC, blah, 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 all these professional bodies. But the thing to remember is not one of those bodies accepts responsibility for any harm that could occur. If harm occurs, it's going to come to the doorstep of your council and presumably the taxpayers. They speak a good game in these solo performances before council, but they don't take any responsibility. And guess what? Very few of them will actually come on a platform like this and debate Bill or myself. So they promote this like parrots. It's safe and effective, safe and effective, safe and effective, safe and effective. And defend it like chicken. In fact, I've got a tie in my case there. Of a chicken. So sometimes I put the tie on and debate my tie. And this is also something that I find annoying. The agencies, the health agencies that promote fluoridation, Australia, New Zealand, England, Canada, Ireland, and so on, none of these agencies are investigating the reports that some individuals are very sensitive to fluoride. And you know what really, and they're just treated as anecdotal reports, which they can ignore. But what annoys me is if you know that a substance causes harm at high doses, health effects at high doses, because of the normal distribution of response in a population to any toxic substance, once you've established that high doses causes harm, you know that there's going to be a small percentage at the other end of that normal distribution that are going to be very sensitive to low fluoride levels. This is what you expect. But none of these health agencies in any of these countries is trying to put this on a scientific level. Okay, and I've already said that. And they're doing a very, very poor job of studying the health of communities that are fluoridated. I have to tell you this story. I was in Dryden, Ontario. I challenged this man to a debate, by the way. Dr. Peter Cooney is the Chief Dental Officer of Canada, and he's running around to all these councils each time the citizens try to stop fluoridation in any town in Canada, and giving them propaganda. But I challenged him to debate on April the 2nd. He didn't accept the debate, but he came to the town one day before, on April the 1st, and gave a presentation clearly designed to muddy the water. But this is the thing which I think you'll like. As far as health effects are concerned, he says, I walked down your high street today, and I didn't see anyone growing horns. And you've been fluoridated for 40 years. So you now know the state of science in terms of health effects of fluoride in Canada. They've got all these specialists in bones. They've got cow horns, moose horns, deer horns, bull horns, and they go around Canada looking to see if they see any horns growing. And if they don't see any horns growing, then clear evidence that fluoridation is not causing any harm. I'm happy to tell you that a few weeks later, the community voted 2-1 to stop fluoridation. Fluoridation is unnecessary. There is no evidence that fluoride is an essential nutrient. As I've already said, there's not one biochemical process in the body that needs fluoride. Here we go. Here's the moment. I believe that fluoridation should never have started, but one moment when clearly it should have ended was in 1999, when the Oral Health Division of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, conceded that the predominant benefit of fluoride is topical, not systemic. You've got to remember that one. It's really important. The agency, the number one agency promoting this in our country, in fact, in the world, there's hardly a day goes by when some official, some doctor is not quoting the CDC's famous statement that fluoridation is one of the top public health achievements of the 20th century. If they only knew the truth of it. But anyway, in this document, they actually admitted that the predominant benefit of fluoride is topical. Now, here's the exact wording. Fluorides carries preventive properties initially were attributed to changes in the enamel during tooth development. However, laboratory and epidemiologic research suggests that fluoride prevents dental caries predominantly after eruption of the tooth into the mouth, and its actions are primarily topical. That should have ended fluoridation. It should have ended it right there, because if fluoride works on the outside of the tooth, not from inside the body, why swallow fluoride and expose every tissue of the body to a known toxic substance when you can brush it on your teeth and spit it out? I'm not advocating fluoridated toothpaste. I'm just saying it's more rational than swallowing it. I haven't used fluoridated toothpaste for 18 years. If you're interested, look, if the truth be known, the key is to get your kids to brush their teeth with anything. Brush it with salt, brush it with sodium bicarbonate, better still use xylitol toothpaste, but brushing is the important thing. We want to know what the top 10 public health achievements of the 20th century was? The invention of the toothbrush. And not only could you solve the medical concerns that we have, but you could solve the ethical concerns, because if you take the approach of promoting fluoridated toothpaste, then you're not forcing it on people that don't I wish that more veterans coming home after risking their lives and losing their limbs in places like Afghanistan and Iraq and other places got up at the council meeting and said, I fought for this country, I fought for freedom, and I don't think what you're doing to me respects that fight. This is not freedom if you're forcing me to take this stuff into my body when I don't want it.
That's right.
Fluoridation is unsafe. Now, I'm going to be very specific about what I mean by unsafe. It means that there's no adequate margin of safety to protect all citizens drinking fluoridated water from known harmful effects. There's no adequate margin of safety. And for that, as far as the harmful effects is, this 500-page document with 1,100 references spells out what fluoride can do to animals and humans. And if you look at the doses which are causing harm to the teeth, harm to the bones, harm to the brain, harm to the endocrine system, you can clearly see if you use the standard methods of risk assessment, which involve safety factors, there is not an adequate margin of safety to protect from numerous of the things that they covered. So, there are many biochemical processes that are harmed by fluoride. Fluoride inhibits enzymes. Fluoride interferes with G proteins. Now, I won't go into the details of this, but I certainly can. If anybody's really interested, I've got a nice little videotape I gave to the IAOMT in Austin a few weeks ago, which has a nice schematic view of how fluoride actually inhibits G proteins. So again, there's no evidence that fluoride can do any good to the human body, but there's plenty of evidence to suggest that it can strike at the very heart of biology. Bottle-fed babies in fluoridated communities are exceeding the EPA's safe reference dose. Bill talked about this, and I just want to give you the evidence in the NRC report. There it is on page 85. There is this figure on 2.8 on page 85 of the NRC report. This is available for free online. And basically, what this is the daily exposure that people have across the whole age range drinking water at 1 part per million. And I've circled that dot there. That dot up there is bottle-fed infants. The red line is the EPA's safe reference dose for fluoride. So clearly, bottle-fed babies are exceeding the EPA's safe reference dose. Now, why do I stress that? I stress that because on the day this massive report was published, it took them 3.5 years to write this report. It was the only review in the world, as far as I know, where the panel was balanced. They had 3 anti-fluoridation, 3 pro-fluoridation, 6 neutral or not declared publicly. They expected to do it in 1 year. That took them 3.5 years. It was a massive work. On the day it was published, the American Dental Association said, this study is irrelevant to water fluoridation. And it took Tweedledum, the CDC, 6 days to say virtually the same. This review is in agreement or is consistent. This review is consistent with our promotion of fluoridation at 1 part per million, or the range that they gave. Now, how could they have said that when the report actually says there are actually 3 age ranges which are exceeding the EPA safe reference dose? No. Propaganda, politics, not science. American children are being hugely overexposed to fluoride. Bill has gone through the total statistics on this. The evidence is increasing dental fluorosis. In 2010, this is the frequency of dental fluorosis. I don't think Bill showed this graph, but it's very good. So 28.5% of all kids aged 12 to 50 in the United States have very mild dental fluorosis, and we were expecting only 10%. 8.6% have mild, and 3.6% have moderate or severe. Dean, the father of fluoridation, said that if there was any mild dental fluorosis, then it negated any benefits from fluoridation. So he would be rolling over in his grave right now. But that's what very mild dental fluorosis could look like. At one end of the range for very mild, it's white cusps on the edge of the cusp of the teeth, white opaque patches, and at the other end, it's up to 25% of the surface. Mild dental fluorosis, impacting 8.6%, have up to 50% of the enamel impacted, and 3.6% have either moderate or severe dental fluorosis. Now, I'm going to jump to, I'm not going to talk about the health or psychological impacts of that, but what I would say is this. To me, it was absolutely reckless to assume that when the fluoride is damaging the baby's tooth cells, the growing tooth cells laying down of the enamel, to assume that it wasn't going to impact any other of the baby's tissues was reckless. And one of the tissues, and this is more or less the rest of my talk, one of the tissues that I'd be most concerned about is the brain. And I'll state quite categorically now, the weight of evidence from many animal and human studies is that fluoride is a potent neurotoxicant, i.e. it can interfere with brain chemistry. So I want to go through some of these studies. Some of you have heard about the IQ studies, but as my son Michael said at our conference in early September in Washington, he said the IQ studies are just the tip of the iceberg. See what is underneath that tip. So this is underneath the iceberg. Here we go. First of all, let's start with animal studies. Now, I don't like animal studies, but the good thing about an animal study is you can control everything except the change that you want to observe. So you can have two sets of animals, one that has fluoride and the other thing absolutely identical, same caging, same food, same lighting, everything's the same, except they don't have the fluoride, and then you investigate the changes. And so from that, there are over 100 animal studies that found that fluoride damages the brain, it damages to the hippocampus, neuronal degeneration, inhibition of cholinesterase, which is a neurotransmitter, it is involved in neurotransmission, damage to the nicotinic receptors, that's also brain neurotransmission, decreased brain glucose utilization, oxidative stress. Okay, well that's all for scientists, right? It's very detailed stuff, but it's a lot of it. Next one is, the first response from promoters, oh, those are all done at high concentrations, you can ignore those. But the first thing I should say about high concentrations, you have to dose a rat 5 to 10 times as much fluoride to get the same blood levels as a human. And it's the blood level which is going to be causing the harm. So you have to dose the animals more. But in this study was done at 1 part per million. Rats were given 1 part per million fluoride in their water for 1 year. They had kidney damage, brain damage observable under a microscope, a greater uptake of aluminum into the brain, and beta amyloid deposits, which are characteristic of Alzheimer's disease. So that's pretty shocking. That's at the level that we are using. Secondly, and this is the one that I think is particularly important, there have been 30 animal studies which shows that animals exposed to fluoride are less able to learn and memorize. That's pretty important, right? You don't want anything interfering with your kid's brain that would make it more difficult for them to learn or memorize. So here's the list. 30 out of 32 studies have found an effect. And the way they do this, they put the animals in mazes, different kinds of mazes, and teach them how to find the cheese, right? And then then they give one of the set animals the fluoride and see how their learning continues. So they use Y mazes, T mazes, Morris water maze, novel object recognition test, open field test, low doses, as I said, 5 parts per million, probably be about the same as a human for 1 part per million. And in all these tests, 30 out of 32, the animals were less able to learn and memorize. And then they've got studies designed for young children. These are not IQ studies. These are before you get into IQ studies. These are non-verbal studies. So in this study, it's a famous study, I can't even pronounce the name, the kids are shown this rather complicated diagram. They're given a bit of paper and a pencil, and the kids try to copy that, okay? Then the piece of paper is taken away, they get another piece of paper, and they try to recall that. Right, draw it again, Johnny. And anyway, here's what they found. And it was a very high quality study, it was done in Mexico. They controlled for many key variables, education, nutritional status, exposure to other contaminants, and so on. And what they found, that children exposed to fluoride, 9 out of 10 of them performed less well on this copying than 9 out of 10 less well than most children of their age. And similarly with the recall, performed less well than 6 out of 10 children of their age. And now we get to the IQ studies. There have now been 48 studies, and 41 of them have shown an association between fairly modest exposure to fluoride and lowered IQ in 4 different countries: China, India, Iran, and Mexico. And 17 of these studies, the fluoride water concentration was less than 4 parts per million. And that is the so-called safe drinking water standard in the United States. So when you hear these people saying, oh, these are high concentrations, you don't have to worry about it, 17 of these studies were done at levels which we call safe in the United States. Then the manure hit the proverbial fan in 2012 when a team from Harvard University, including Philippe Grandjean, world famous for his work on mercury and neurodevelopment in children, published a meta-analysis where they looked at 27 of the studies, 27 of these studies, and they compared, in each of these studies, they compared the IQ of the children in a high fluoride village with a low fluoride village. In most of these studies, the high fluoride was well water versus well water. In some of them, it was coal. Some rural Chinese cook with coal, heat with coal, dry their food, the corn, with coal. And that's a source of dental fluorosis. But most of the studies were done on water. And it was published in one of the leading environmental health journals in the world. They acknowledged, this team acknowledged, that they didn't have all the information in all of these studies that they would have liked. Some of them were very good studies, some of them not enough information. But they also said the results were remarkably consistent, considering that these studies, take the 25 of them were from China, and 2 were from Iran. The ones in China were done in all different geographical locations in China, were done by different research teams, were done at different times. And yet, 26 out of 27 showed a lowering of IQ between the children in the high fluoride village and the low fluoride village. And the average lowering of IQ was about 7 IQ points, which is substantial. Now again, the promoters keep saying that these were done at high concentrations. Well, these are the concentrations in 20 of the studies. I took out the ones which were involved with coal. I took out the ones which didn't publish the numbers. This is the concentration in the high fluoride village. Now, before you make a judgment on whether you think any of those are high or not, I should tell you that normally, when you are looking, when a scientist have found harm in a small study, and these are all, 100, 200, 300 kids, you've got a small study, you need a safety factor of 10 to extrapolate to find a safe level for a whole large population. And in this case, particularly because, say the Chinese studies, they were all Chinese. They were all living in rural areas. Their lifestyle was the same. Their diet was the same. Nearly everything was the same about these kids. But if you're extrapolating to the United States, you've got different ethnic groups. You've got different genetics. You have different diets. You have different lifestyles. And you need at least a factor of 10 from the dose which is causing harm to what we've talked about before, the safe reference dose. Divide any of those by 10. I mean, I'm blurring now a distinction between concentration and dose, but divide any of those by 10, and you can say, based upon the whole lot, there is no adequate margin of safety to protect all our children. But it gets worse when we look at the details of one of the studies. One of the studies which I'm particularly interested in, and I think some of Regina, Susan, and others who came, Bill, who came to our conference, because we had the author of this study to our conference, and he gave us the latest. He also invited me to go to China and have a look at the villages where these studies were done. And you want to know irony here? He works for the Center for Disease Control and Prevention in China. So here we have the Center for Disease Control and Prevention in the America that wants to put fluoride in our water. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention is trying to get fluoride out of the water. And they are genuine about trying to find a safe level that they need to get down to. Anyway, he compared the IQ of two villages. The low fluoride village, the average was 0.36. The other high fluoride village was 2.5. He controlled for lead, he controlled for iodine. Later, in retrospect, he's controlled for arsenic. And he found a drop of 5 to 10 IQ points across the whole age range and a shift of the IQ curve over. So here it is. The black is the low fluoride village. The magenta dotted line is the high fluoride village. You can see that the whole IQ curve has been shifted over. And what's the significance of that? In a nutshell, you've dramatically reduced the number of children who are highly intelligent, brilliant, geniuses, and you've dramatically increased the number of children that are mentally handicapped. We'll see the details in a moment. We'll stress that. But he did something that I'm not aware that any other group did. Zhang subdivided his high fluoride village into 5 groups, A, B, C, D, E, of escalating fluoride concentration in the well water. So you're going from 0.75, 1.5, 2.4, 3.2, 4.1. And look what happens to the IQ in those subgroups. 0.75, 99, 95, 92, 89, 78. So as the fluoride concentration goes up, the IQ goes down. Here it is plotted. Now that's exactly what an epidemiologist is looking for. It's called a dose-response curve. As one variable goes up, the other one systematically increases. Now what he did next was even more shocking. He looked at the percentage of the kids in each of these subgroups who had an IQ less than 80. That means less than 80, between 80 and 70 is borderline mentally handicapped. Below 70, mentally handicapped. Look how those numbers jump. None, that's 0.75. 1.5, nearly 10%. 2.5, 14%. 3.3, 21%. 4, 37.5%. So here is mentally handicapped going up with fluoride concentrations. Now, this is so devastating, this facts here. I will actually, let me save this up because I'm going to show you what this means on a population level in a moment. But can I just stress here, and I'll stress it again, the last children in this country that need a few IQ points shaved off their intelligence are children from low-income families. They're precisely the targets for this practice. So here are these dentists going around thinking that they're doing good thing to poor people, but if this science is solid, then they're the worst thing that they could do to these kids. The Children in low-income families already have so many strikes against them as far as IQ. They have a poorer diet. They live in inner cities. They get more pollution than other people. Their families have less time to look after them. There's so many strikes. There's probably poorer schooling in the inner cities and so on. I'm talking about this statistically. Any family can escape the statistics. And so we go on. The lowest level at which Zhang found a lowering of IQ was 1.53, but you notice there's a standard deviation here, and if you subtract that from the number, then the lowest level is 1.26. That's what a toxicologist would do. The toxicologist looks for the lowest level, the lowest observable adverse effect level, and that's what goes into the risk assessment. And I think to state the obvious, if you're seeing a lowering of IQ at 1.26, you've got no margin of safety whatsoever. You don't even have a margin of safety to protect against the range of doses. Some kids drinking 1.2 parts per million would get a higher dose than some of the kids drinking 1.26 if they were high water drinkers. And I'll tell you another thing, which makes this even worse. I asked Zhang about this. Most of those kids do not use fluoridated toothpaste. They're in rural China. No, not fluoridated toothpaste. So our kids are getting more, in that respect, more fluoride. And also, most of those children were breastfed, not bottle-fed. So those two factors, we have even less margin of safety. Our kids are getting more fluoride than those Chinese children in the Zhang's test. And I've talked about the safety factor of 10. Grandjean said, fluoride seems to fit in with lead, mercury, and other poisons that cause chemical brain drain. And the author of the book published this year entitled Only One Chance. Now, this is right to the end now. You've been incredibly patient, probably spent far too much time. But IQ, like every human trait, is normally distributed, the famous bell-shaped curve. What does that mean? It means that most people have a value close to the mean, close to 100. But at the two ends is where important things are happening. This green area here is the fraction of the total. If you look at that area compared to the total area under the curve, that is the fraction of the children in our society who are very bright or geniuses. And this mauve area here is the fraction, again, that over the total, is the fraction of the kids who are mentally handicapped. Now, if you were to shift the IQ curve over by 5 IQ points, which we think we did when we had lead in gasoline for the whole population, 5 IQs down, a parent would not notice the difference in their siblings if they differed by 5 IQ points. You wouldn't notice that difference. A school teacher wouldn't notice that. So it's not obvious unless you do the testing, which of course we're not doing. But if you shifted by 5 IQ points, look what you do to the tails. You halve the number of geniuses in our society, you double the number of mentally handicapped. Now, if you are an official, a regulatory official, and you find out that a substance in common use has the potential to do that, you would do everything in your human power to get rid of that substance. Now, it might be incredibly difficult. Maybe this substance is something that they use in silicon chips, in telephones, the things that we all crave for, the computers and everything else, and it would make such a dramatic impact on society that people would scream, no, don't regulate that. But if it's something that we're deliberately adding to the water, and we can stop simply by turning the tap, wouldn't you think we would do it? Wouldn't any reasonable person want to do that? This man would. He would turn it off tomorrow. And this professional dentist would do it. And Regina would do it. Susan would do it. And you would do it. Nancy, I think most of you would do it. So what's stopping the politicians? What's stopping the others? What's stopping all the other dentists, all the other professionals? What's stopping all the other officials? Well, I believe it is simple to end fluoridation. You just need a strong wrist to turn off that tap. But to turn off that tap, we'd need a political will to do it. And to get that political will, we need masses of people educated, informed, and organized. And this is what this meeting is about. It's the beginning of this information process, an educational process. And thank God you've got someone like Regina who is going to put her life and soul into doing this organizing. And, you know, Bill and I will keep coming back to Dallas. I'm sure he will because his father lives here. We'll keep coming back here because I have so much fun doing it. But don't rely on us. I have this analogy. I say, affecting change is like driving a nail through a piece of wood. The expert can sharpen the nail, and I hope I've sharpened a few nails tonight. But the expert can't push the nail through the bit of wood. I know that. You need the hammer of public opinion to drive that nail home. You can see that with every social change. It doesn't happen in theory. It doesn't happen from books. It doesn't happen in university classes. It's only when you get to the people, the citizens, and you organize them that you can get that hammer and knock that nail home. Thank you very much.